Right. Welcome to this little video. We're going to have a look through whoa, sorry, I'm echoing on myself. We're going to have a look at just getting rid of some of the support material from standard resin 3D prints and some of the cleanup processes we're going to do at the same time. If you have any particular questions, please feel free to put them in the chat if you're watching live. If you're not, this might seem a slightly disjointed video, but people will be asking things in the meantime, so if I get sidetracked, that's probably why. Anyway, let's make a start. So most of the kits I produce come in a form like this. So this is a 3D printed resin, printed at 25 micrometer scale, and hopefully this will focus properly. There we go. No? Okay. So here you have the main part of the locomotive here, and this sort of support bars, and they have very small tips on the end designed to break off under pressure. So all we're going to be doing is removing these essentially. This print's actually fairly good. You may recognize this as my Neilson 222 prototype. DHL got their hands on this one, so we have a very broken corner here, where it should look something more like that. But other than that, this print is generally okay. You may be able to see some slight stepping on the side here. I don't know if the light's going to let you see that properly. And there's a little bit of an error here at the front as well, but we can have a look at getting rid of that later on in this video. I'll show you that properly. Oh well. So there's a few different ways you can deal with support removal. One I prefer, get yourself a piece of paper or something to capture all the bits. There's going to be a lot of bits from this. First method, small pliers. Just grabbing in between the support material there and giving it just a little twist to the side. Hopefully you'll be able to hear this as well. Don't know if you heard that click there. Let's have a go at this one. And ideally what happens is if you break something like that there, it should just come away and still be attached to the base. I mean, sometimes they break off entirely like this, but then you end up with bits everywhere, so that's not quite as useful. The other main way of doing it is to literally just use finger pressure. So, sorry, I'm sort of half watching myself back while doing this, and the lag is very distracting. So, just pushing in at the top of the supports like this, you should be able to hear them breaking away like that. Like that. There we go. So that's all we're really looking to do at the moment. If you're particularly worried about breaking parts, what you can do is cut it off further down here with a pair of flush cutters or something like that, and sand back up to the top level. It takes a bit longer, a bit more of a faff, but you know, a bit less chance of damaging the side here or getting chips in it at all. The other thing we have to worry about on this particular model is, I don't know how well you can see in here, but there are some guard irons and so on in this section under the back, so we have to be careful not to mistake them for support material and break those off in the process. Forgetting I have my tea with me. Right, so I'm going to make a start with that. Oh, hello Sam. Good to see someone's watching this thing. Going through a bit of a car crash at the moment. Do you recognise that? Yeah, well, this Neilson is actually slightly different to the original one. It is very slightly bigger, but surprisingly, it's about, when I got it on my layout at home, it's about the same size as a terrier, so, or the old Hornby Terrier at least. It's not the smallest thing in the world. So you see this finger pressure method is useful for getting rid of large sections like this, but when you want to start being a bit more precise, it's best to switch over to the pliers or cutters or something like that. So you might see my pile of bits starting to get larger and larger. Usually this is the point where something sort of pings off and lands in my tea, so probably drink that before that happens. Uh, yeah, so I'm well, thank you very much. How are you getting on? You got any projects going on at the moment? So I'm just going to move on with the pliers and do this sort of more fiddly area around the back. Ooh. Yeah, I've seen some of your stuff on the mid-hands rower. What is your role, if you don't mind me asking? You've got particularly fiddly bits around the footsteps here that I'm just trying to do neatly. Well, Junior Porter's as worthwhile a role as any, I'm sure. Oh, nearly got some in the tea then. Speaking of tea, it's an essential service. Uh, who am I using for the prints? Interesting question, quite a difficult one to answer. I buy them through the 3D Hub's online sort of portal type thing. Um, but they've changed their practices recently, so you can't actually specify the print hub you want to use anymore. So it's a bit sort of potluck really now. I'm not a big fan of it, so I've looked at getting my own printer. That's a very expensive option. I don't think I'll have the money to do that for a while, but that's somewhere I'd like to go eventually. But the thing with this, with 3D Hub stopping or not letting you choose anymore, is you get sort of fairly inconsistent quality now. So these are generally pretty good. You get the occasional error or something like this, if I can show you without it lagging. So, oh, there's a few lines on there. I don't know if you can see that. Focus. There we go. Yeah, and the price varies as well. So I've got an order waiting to go at the moment. I'm waiting on sort of one more reply. And I've sort of checked the price of it over the last few days, and it sort of jumps by 10 to 20 pounds a day. So yeah, exactly. The price does vary a lot. So yeah, last order I was looking at, most of the quotes were about £70, went up to sort of 90, and eventually when I bought it, it was 65, I think. So yeah, it's worth just sort of waiting around a little bit to see how the prices vary, I guess. I don't know how that works if you've got two people uploading the same file. That's not a student discount thing, is it? Because my student discounts stopped working now. I'm still a student, but they won't give they haven't given me the discount for the last few orders I've done. So I probably need to give someone a message and try and sort that out. Oh well. Okay. So you might be able to see here. I've got the front section quite well off. There's still some bits in the middle at the back that I'm trying to do though at the moment without sort of messing up this sort of guard iron section already. I think I've already cut that one a little bit too short. Oh well. As always, pile of bits. And there we go. Body release from its supports. Plenty of space in there to add lots of nice lead weight. Get rid of the final few bits in here. And that's not looking too bad. So if I can work out the lag on this thing, you should be able to see, here we go, guard irons. Got that one a little bit too short, but that's not too much of an issue. I can always fix that a little bit later on. Still need to get stuff out of the cab though. Yeah, I agree with that. It's certainly a lot better than the old white, strong and flexible, or whatever they call it now. This is the sort of area where finger pressure is quite useful to do this sort of thing. These bits do ping off quite easily, fortunately. And yeah, you do end up with some in awkward places as well, like down inside the bunker here. Yeah. Let's see if this focuses, but you might be able to see some of the cab detail in there as well now. Want to focus? No. Sort of. Right. So you can see the damage that DHL decided to give to it. A nice complete footstep on this side, and not on this side. So I'll have to sort that out a little bit later. We sometimes end up with little bits of extra support on the body like this, so let's take those off. Oh, hello Gary, welcome. Sometimes the printers like to put little tiny extra bits of support in between things like springs here. If I can show you that at the right angle. There we go. Little bits in there. Little needle file or something is very useful for getting those out. Right, so more supports in the cab. There we go. So you can see along here, if you, I need to get a camera with a better focus, along here and along here, we have little bits of material left where the supports were attached. I'm going to go down and just file those off a little bit. I'm kind of cheating, I'm using a Dremel, so it's easily doable by hand, it just takes you a little bit longer. This stuff sands really easily, so there's not really any issue with using a fairly fine grade sandpaper. This is 240 grit. I wouldn't use that on the main detail parts because you can actually see scratches from this, but I'd use a finer grade when we get to that point. But at the moment I'm just getting rid of the bulk material, so that's not an issue. Oh well, that is quite a price increase, isn't it, Sam? I was going to say mine aren't quite that bad. The other issue you occasionally get with prints, don't know how well you can see it across the front, but there's a very slight bit of curling of the corners here. It's not quite flat across the bottom of the footplate, so I'm just going to have a go at that as well. Should also go without saying that breathing in resin dust isn't a great idea either, so make sure you're in a well-ventilated area. More well-ventilated than I am, anyway. Yeah, that's all looking okay. There's a few more bits and pieces to do, getting rid of excess material on here, but I'll do that with file later on, I think. For the moment, that should be enough. Yeah, that was the other thing I mentioned earlier. I'm not sure if anyone was actually watching at that point, but there are a few print lines across here. You can get the lighting to pick up on that. No, there's a few little horizontal lines on here. That's the kind of error you get sort of fairly regularly when printing stuff. So a couple of minutes with a file or Dremel, we should get rid of that fairly easily. And of course I can go and neaten that up later on. Yeah, I think some of the disparity between the quotes you get is geographic. So 3D Hubs still like to put you towards local printers, at least in theory. So I guess that might account for some of the differences. I don't know why it would account for that much of a difference though. Get rid of some of this down here as well. Right, there we go. That'll do for a basic start. So the other advantage of doing this is you can roll it up and just tip everything into the bin. So I'll do that now. Right. And now the point where we see if this, I've got resin dust all over my laptop, if this actually fits the chassis it's been designed for. So obviously this started out as a Neilson 222 design, but I got lent a chassis by someone else for designing a different project, and I thought that looked nice under this chassis. So close to fitting that all I've done is just extend this section between the or on the tanks by 3mm. So I'm going to see if that's made enough of a difference for it to fit my chassis. So we hold on a second, I'll go and find that. here we go. Donor chassis. I'm not sure what this locomotive has done to deserve it, but although it's doing better than the other Electrotren chassis I had, which is now an 040. I might show you that in a minute. I can't remember which screws I need to undo. Consult the manual. So an Electrotren, it's that one and that one to get the body off, apparently. Let's see if this works. I have no idea if this body is going to fit, by the way, so you're learning literally at the same time that I am. Let's see, there we go. That to one side. Leave the couplings in there for now. Try not to lose that. Just finish my tea before I get any more resin in there. So, let's have a look. How's that looking for you? The front needs to go a little bit lower down. There's a few bits of material I still need to take off there. Blown some resin into my face, that's probably not good. So I've just taken a section out the inside here. The tolerances on 3D printing aren't great. Generally you get the same sort of tolerance throughout one print. So if, say, one part is out, the whole part will be out by the same amount, so it all looks consistent. But I find you get up to about 0.5 millimeter of sort of tolerance in between sort of areas like frames and so on. Let's see what happens now. That's on there. Nice. So, I don't know if this is going to light properly, but let's take that out. So you might be able to see just here and here, there are tiny little cutouts that I've designed in, which coincide with the tops of the cylinder. I don't know what these bits are called. Slide bar mounts, possibly. So it should coincide with the tops of those, and the wheels, obviously, in the wheel slots here. What prototype is this? It's not any particular prototype, actually. The design started out as this, which is a Neilson 222 tank based on a prototype owned by the Dublin and Drogheda Railway over in Ireland. So it started out like that. This is a model I produced with my own design chassis underneath. But for some people, making their own chassis might be a little difficult. So that's the original chassis that goes under this. I've tested all this. This locomotive in particular runs quite nicely. Although being a 222, it does suffer from traction issues slightly, so there's a lot of lead packed into this body. So that model's available from me now if you're interested. But for some people, making their own chassis is a little bit difficult. So I thought, I like this body style, but what sort of chassis can I fit it to that would sort of still work but look nice? And obviously this Electrotren chassis happened to be about the right sort of length. The wheel diameter looks about right. So it's not any particular prototype. It's sort of freelance based on a slightly modified freelance locomotive, if you see what I mean. But I think it looks pretty good for a small industrial type locomotive in general. It's very much a Neilson sort of house style locomotive. So yeah, and you can see under here the differences between this and this. The tanks on this one are slightly longer to allow for the slightly longer chassis, and I've added the extra bits of frame in the guard irons at the back because the Electrotren chassis doesn't have them on there already. So I haven't run this chassis before, but let's give it a go and see if we can have a demonstration test track. Just give it a bit of a clean up. And I don't actually have a controller here. So this is just going to get pure voltage of whatever my wall transformer is currently set to, which is, I can have a look, possibly 5 volts. See if I can do this without my hand getting in the way. Hey, there we go. Yeah, getting stuck on my extra bits of wire there. I'm just having to hold the wires on the end here, which is why it's a bit jerky, but there we go. So I've just gone from sort of bare print to working locomotive in the time that this has been going on, which is I think about half an hour now. So there you go. Plenty more detailing and stuff to do on that, but it works. That's quite pleasing actually. I've got a few plans to do other things with this sort of chassis, so now that I know it works, it's a good basis to start with. Let's put my test track away. Yeah, there you go. The original 222 version against the new 060 outside cylindered version. Yeah, they are pretty good runners out of the box, those Electrotren chassis. They're about 50 quid, I think I got mine for, brand new. You can get them for a little bit less than that second hand if you're lucky. They don't come up that often, so. Um, Sorry, you asked, you say you made a kit for the chassis too, just, yes. So I'm hardly a professional kit maker or anything. I just get my own designs printed, and if other people want them, I'm quite happy to sell them a set of prints to make their own. So I sell this one as a part called the Neilson 222T. It's not based on any particular prototype, so I can't really give it a proper name as such. But you get a print much like the one I started with a few minutes ago. Start with a print that looks a bit like that. We'll come back to this in a minute. It's interesting. And yeah, much the same for the chassis, and then you have to add wheels, a motor and gearbox I supply because they have to be very small to be able to fit in here in the first place. And yeah, stuff like buffers. These are Bachmann ones, I think. And a few of the extra little bits and details, coupling hooks and stuff you have to add separately. So you get a body like that, a chassis for the 222. And yeah, those are available from me now. Not sure how I can put. So I'm going to put an email address in the comments that I use for ordering stuff. Most people contact me via RM Web, but if you're not on there, I also have an email address. Sorry, I'm trying to type here. So I've just put an email address in the comments if you're interested in that sort of thing. Getting hold of one of these. So that's the main part of or what I intended to get out of the way of this video, the support removal things. If you're watching this later, recorded back, or I've referred you to it to sort of get an idea for how to remove supports and so on. Not sure the rest of this video will make much sense to you, but I'm going to keep working on stuff for a bit and answering a few questions. So let's move on to that. So yeah, there we go. Brand new kit, kind of version of the Neilson, but for an Electrotren chassis. These bodies are going to be pounds, of course. The discussion we've had before, prices tend to vary wildly, but a body like that will be about £35. A complete kit for the 222, I'm aiming to get it done for £45 at the moment, including wheels and, no, not wheels, including motor and gears, but not wheels or any of the other bits you need to complete. So, get that GWR body out of the way. Let's put that up on there. There's a little bit of a fiddling still needed to get this chassis to fit perfectly, but I can sort of have a go through that at a later date. Put that up there. Oh, we've got a question about the F1. How much for the F1? The F1 I'm aiming to have for somewhere between 65 and 75 pounds. I'm aiming for 70, but it's very heavily dependent on the printers themselves. So whatever they quote me, I have to pay them, and yeah, to cover my costs, I have to charge a little bit more. Speaking of F classes, or F1s, there's the prototype F class. It's running fairly nicely now. This is all designed to be held together with one screw holding the body and everything together. I need to replace this bogie because I messed up putting the axles in slightly, so they're not quite, all four wheels don't quite touch the ground at the same time. But just by removing one bolt, we should be able to take the whole thing apart. Let's come out. There we go. So we have that little unit, the little flexible drawbar on there. And then we have the main chassis. And the drive unit sort of clips in at the back here. So just lift that up and wiggle it forwards. This drive unit is a little bit of a mess. I've been experimenting trying to put pickups on it. We have sort of one under the motor here for the front wheels and one on the back here. There's not quite enough weight in just this section for it to run properly on its own. So there's some sort of old iron nails in here and some, whatever it's called, liquid gravity steel ball type weights in there as well. There we go. Trying to line everything up is a little bit awkward sometimes, but it's all okay. Yeah. Again, this is one of my own chassis designs. I did try and find a ready-to-run chassis that would do this, but the F class, it's quite an old design, so it has sort of very short coupled wheelbase, but with very large diameter driving wheels. And there's nothing else out there that really does that. So my own chassis it is. But it seems to work pretty well, so very happy with that. Sam, you're heading off. Good to have you. Good to have you contributing. I'm sure I'll be in touch at some point. So one of the other chassis I'm looking at the moment for making bodies for in various descriptions. This is a Hornby Ginty. I've sort of hacked the big weight off at the front here, so we can sort of drop a body on it that has a reasonable amount of clearance under the boiler. So this used to be a Ren R1 at some point. I 3D printed this replacement cab. It has a cab interior as well, but it's masked off at the moment for painting. But of course I can't use the original chassis because there's a great big motor in the cab here, and there's a great big section of weight here where I've closed in or opened out the section under boiler. So I need an alternative chassis. This I think will probably do for now. Took a fair bit of hacking around to get that to fit nicely. But once that front wheel is lined up properly under the splasher, I think that actually looks alright. The front wheelbase is kind of wrong, and the rear wheelbase is as well, but I think the wheels are a bit small, but I think they're close enough. I'm going to look at getting hold of an Oxford Rail Dean Good chassis for this sort of thing, because the wheelbase is almost spot on, and the wheels are actually the incorrect size for an Oxford Rail for the Dean Goods, but the perfect size for the SECR class. And to be honest, I'm not sure it's. I mean, if you enjoy the process, as I certainly did, of hacking up an old Ren model for something like this, it's good fun. But I think I might try and produce a 3D print of an original R-class body at some point to fit a ready-to-run chassis, just because there is quite a lot of work in doing this sort of thing. Boiler, add the bits in the front, replace the cab, sort of tried to enclose it underneath. Done a lot of work to the bunker as well. That's one of my projects on the bench. Let's go for a quick workbench tour. We have what's currently our camera mount. Yeah, that's my original Ren R1 with my. I did this paint job when I was probably about 10, so I'm planning to restore that fully at some point, leave it completely original Ren spec. You may see something of theme coming on here. That's the R-class we've just looked at. It's another Electrotren body from some original experiments. I have quite a few of these lying around to be hacked up into things such as this. An R1 sort of SECR spec. What else have we got? Another one. Yeah, in sort of early wartime spec. I'm not sure how well this actually, how well this livery actually fits the date I'm aiming for, but it's a livery I don't have, so I'm going to make an R-class with it. Why not? So let's see if I can focus that back on the workbench. This part is a leftover from an N-gauge F1. Yeah, this is the F1 version of the tender. This one didn't print perfectly, which is why I still have it. Well, it's not with the person who bought the kit. You might be able to see there's some very thin parts on here that haven't quite printed properly, which is of course the risk with N-gauge. I don't have the time to sort of manually resize everything from the minimum wall requirements when I've scaled it down half, so you do end up risking things breaking. But there is some brilliantly fine detail on this. The printers did do a really good job on the final version, but of course that one stayed with me because it hasn't quite come out properly. A couple more things to have a look at in a minute. Good question. What was the Electrotren chassis cut down to 040? Let's see if I've got that somewhere. Yes, I have. I'm not a well-organised person. Things tend to be all over the place around here. There we go. So this started out life as one of these, and you can see the motor's gone. The chassis has been cut off just behind the wheels here, and the con rods have been taken off, cut down, again just behind the wheels, very carefully because they're quite fragile. And I've taken the original worm off here and put it onto a smaller motor. So this is an N20 type. So these are fairly easily, well, they're fairly cheap. You can buy them for a couple of quid each. I tend to use, I've got a proper one somewhere. So I buy the motors like this, with the gearbox attached. And this is what goes into the F class. There's also one of those in here. But I like them because they're reasonably smooth running. You can run them off 12 volts and they actually respond pretty well at low speeds. So yeah, they're not bad. All I've done there is take the gearbox off and mount it onto the original worm that came with the Electrotren chassis. So yeah, what I have here are essentially two ready-to-run chassis that I can make whatever sort of industrial locomotive takes my fancy, and then fit to one of these either ready-to-run or almost ready-to-run chassis, and it saves you the effort of having to make your own. Oh, hello, Linny. Welcome. Yes, there is one in the Sharpie. Speaking of, one of the other things I'm working on at the moment. How's your test build coming along, by the way? Yeah, the thing with with the chassis I've designed myself, the con rods are usually the difficult bit. So that's kind of, I'd go on the, if you're buying any of my kits, I'd go on the assumption that you'd have to make your own. For example, that is one of the con rods for this particular chassis. It's better if I put it down, not if I put it off camera. And yeah, that comes back to the 3D printing tolerances idea I was talking about earlier. The tolerance between that and fitting the actual wheelbase on your chassis is sometimes not perfect. So I go on the assumption of having to make your own con rods for any kit that I make. Yeah, well, speaking of pickup mountings, that's a good point to raise with the 222. If I just whip the body off again. So you can see that same motor type in here. This one kind of has a hybrid pickup style, so let's see what I can show. So you can see just there, don't know how well this is going to focus. This particular kit has a phosphor bronze strip running from the front to the back here, sprung very slightly. You might be able to see it better there. If I move those from side to side, might be able to see the bits of phosphor bronze just moving around a little bit. But there's no space for me to put one of my preferred pickups on the front or rear axles on here. And especially with the way they move as well, it's quite difficult to, you got up and down motion as well as side to side, so it's quite difficult to line the pickup up properly. Whereas this fixed wheelbase and centre, it has one of the DCC Concepts pickups on it. So the bolt that attaches the body to the chassis goes through the middle of that pickup, and it's just a wiper style pickup mounting on to the central wheels here. So this one has a kind of hybrid setup. Most I would design for the standard pickup type. Put my arm one away. Oh, and for any of those who heard what happened to the original body from the Neilson, I did fix it, but it's still too light to run properly. So it looks nice, but it doesn't really go anywhere very quickly. Yeah. And yeah, when I've designed my own chassis, I like to try and figure out a way to hold them to the bodies properly. So I do try and figure out bolting patterns and things like that to hold them on properly. Not always possible, and it's not possible with RTR chassis because then I'd have to try and work out where all the bolt holes are on this and do it precisely, and that's very, very difficult. So you just have to live with it for an RTR type chassis, but yeah, that sort of thing, you just have to sit on there and live with it. What were we talking about? The Sharpie. So this is actually the original reject shell from the one I sent to Linny for test building. So I got this one in. There are a few bits on it that weren't sort of up to scratch quality-wise. There was a lot of random lines on the bottom. There's a little bit of warping at the front and a few print lines and so on, and sort of bits chipped out the side here. But so I got a replacement for that, which I then sent to Linny. After that, I've gone through and sanded all the bits off this and sort of tried to make do. It's come out okay. There's still a few little bits of warping issues, like the bottom of the footplate isn't quite straight here, but I don't know. I can live with that anyway. It's never going to be an exhibition loco, so. And yeah, I didn't have a roof for mine, so we just put a little very simple weatherboard style cab on here. And yeah, the chassis, if anyone was interested, so I demonstrated taking a body off the sports earlier on. The chassis you can see has a very similar structure. You follow a very similar procedure, but you have to be a lot more careful with these because you have guard irons everywhere and brakes. These ones in particular are quite susceptible to breaking off. So yeah, but hopefully from this you can see the idea with the chassis. Got holes here to mount your bearings in, slide your axles through, and so on, and a space for the motor and gearbox to poke through the bottom here. So I'm going to try building that up at some point. So I'll have Sharpie, the Furnace Railway Sharpie. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do with it because I don't model the Furnace Railway or anywhere that would need one, but I like it, so we'll see when we get there, I guess. Got a comment here saying, with the cut down Electrotren chassis, you can make a beanie. I haven't heard of the beanie. Freelance 042. That's yeah, something on the cards. I'm planning to make a few 040 and 042 chassis locomotives from this chassis. So I think it's quite an easy thing to make, and they run reasonably well as well. So that's a possibility. Neilson also made a few sort of standard class 04s they sold to industrial places and mines and all those sorts of things. So I could probably make a reasonable imitation of some of those as well. And the other model I have on the go at the moment, we go here, is the SECR Manning Wardle number 313. Z4. Let's have a quick Google of that. Yeah, that Z4 looks like a reasonable possibility for that sort of thing. Try and get rid of those wires. Okay, so the SECR Manning Wardle, this is a tiny locomotive. I had a lot of trouble fitting the motor in here on CAD. I still don't know if it's going to fit in real life. I guess we'll find out. Let's see. Don't know how well you'll be able to read the numbers on my ruler. But the boiler there is 12, 13 millimeters diameter. So to find a motor that fits at all is quite a job. But I think I've done that. So there we go. Yeah, this print is the batch of prints I got in which had this in it and this in and so on. They all got a bit of nice handling from DHL. So that one had a section missing here. This one has some chips around the buffers and so on. If I was selling these prints on, I would probably try and tidy those up a little bit. Not tidy them up, I would get reprints of these because the manufacturers are supposed to replace them for me if they get damaged in transit. But just for these proving testing models, that's the sort of damage I can fix myself fairly easily, so I'm not too bothered about it. Yeah, it's still slightly daunting trying to fit the motor in here, but we'll see how well that goes. We also have the roof. Let's hold that on properly. Getting the curve to the back of this roof was also quite a job, but I think it's gone right. And obviously that lets you paint the cab interior that we have there. Again, it's some basic detail, but we can't print too much just because of the material tolerances. So if I were to print a long, thin reversing lever or something just here, there's a very, very high chance that it would snap off in transit or something like that. So I didn't. That's the sort of thing you can put in with a bit of plastic strip afterwards. It's not difficult. So yeah, that locomotive, I've made a chassis for it. I've never designed my own outside cylinder chassis before. So I don't know if this is going to work. You can see I've modular cylinders in at the front. And we have the, where's my pointing device gone? We have the slide bars here. We've got two and a spare, essentially. And the world's smallest con rods, I think. I don't know if those are going to work yet either, so that will also be an experiment. But yeah, this one seems to have come out fairly nicely. Again, we've got missing guard iron and so on. But again, that's stuff I can replace myself, so I will do that for this particular model. But if this chassis doesn't work, I'm fairly confident I'll be able to get it to work, but it might take a bit of fiddling to set up. But if I can't get it to work, that's partly what I design, or I sort of built this cut down Electrotren chassis for. is a small oval row with fairly similar wheelbase, fairly similar cylinder size. The wheels on this are 2mm to larger diameter for the original Manning Wardle prototype, but something like that with a very thin motor should fit in something like this. It won't fit in this particular model because there's a slightly wider section here, but I can always modify this file to open it up slightly and make this up and make it fit. Then he asks, what are the wheel sizes? I can't remember in feet and inches, but millimeters they're 12. It should be 11 point something. But I was buying them from Scale Link, and 12mm is the smallest wheel size they do. And to be honest, I think that's going to be close enough, really. I don't want to be working with anything much smaller than this. So the prototype wheel should be 11.8mm or something. I'm using 12mm, and the Electrotren chassis is 14mm, which is actually the correct wheel diameter for some of the other Manning Wardle standard classes. So the SECR bought a Manning Wardle standard F class, I believe, which later they added a cab 2 and various other bits to make it into this. But some of the other Manning Wardles were similar in design, so I could modify this print to represent them, but with larger wheel diameters. So one of them did have I think it's 3'6" wheel diameter, which is what this is. I think that might have been a Class E. So once I've had a look at this body and just sort of had a go and see if it works, I should be able to modify this into a Manning Wardle standard E, standard. I think there was a G class as well. But all looked fairly similar with very slight differences. So yeah, that's something I'm going to look into doing with this particular chassis in future. Just try and keep all my bits separate. The amount of times I've snapped off a guard iron or something and tried to fit it back to the wrong locomotive, it's probably not a good thing. So yeah, I'm fairly confident this can work, so I'm going to clean that up and probably post a few things on my RM web thread about that at some point. Clean it up a little bit, and then this will be available soon. I've already done another design for a Foxwalker industrial locomotive that uses the same chassis. So I'm looking to print that in the next few weeks and set that up for sale as well. But I am pleasantly surprised about how well this chassis runs, so yeah, very pleased with that. And as I said earlier, we've gone from sort of bare shell support material to running locomotive in about half an hour, so it's not bad. And all my locomotives have things like these holes here. That's the focus. So we have holes sort of kind of pre-drilled for handrails, a couple here for parts of the safety valve system, one up here for the whistle, a couple more for the handrails, some for buffers and coupling hooks and so on. Those are never perfectly sized, you always have to drill them out a little bit. They're a good guideline, so make sure you get everything in the right place. Another question, would I do the MSWJR Dubs tank engines? I have not heard of those, so let's have a little bit of a Google. MSWJR. Do you have a particular class number for those locomotives or anything? I'm getting sort of random results as I put those in here. SMAR. Dubstone Industrial. Yeah, a quick Google. I can't locate a particular type of locomotive. It's just coming up with lots of images of random things. So, not sure I'll be able to track down exactly what that class is. There is a photo of one. Is there? Not getting photos through on here, so it doesn't seem to have worked. Let's put in so I'm just adding to the comments at the moment a link to my RM web thread. If you have images and stuff of that particular class, it might be worth just chucking one on there and I'll see what we can do with that. So there we go. I guess that video has kind of gone through support material removal and stuff at the beginning. I'm going to try and sort of guide people to that. And yeah, the rest of it, we've gone through a couple of the projects I'm working on at the moment and a few things that might come out soon. So keep your eyes peeled, I guess. SWJR, let's have a look at that locomotive. Okay, so we have a fairly small 060T. Yeah, that's not a bad looking locomotive, is it? Yeah, that's the sort of thing I could consider. I've got a bit of a backlog of projects to work on at the moment. I haven't got a massive amount of time either, but that's always the sort of thing I can maybe have a go at later on the line. No worries. It's kind of fun to live stream for a change. I guess it saves me a job editing as well. I think lower quality is kind of expected from this sort of thing. But yeah, I'm gonna wrap up now. I've got a couple of other things to go and do. But yeah, I was quite pleased that this worked first time. Runs quite nicely. And yeah, thanks for watching. There's a couple. I think the link hopefully should have come up in the comments now. There's a link to an email address if you want to get in contact with me, and a link to the RM web thread. Everything I do goes in that thread anyway, so that's probably a useful place to get in. Anyway, thanks for watching, folks. I'm going to sign off now. Cheers. Bye.